Welcome to the Maybe Not So Great Books channel, You Decide. This is lesson 11 of 14. Politicians and markets play different games, from basic economics, a common sense guide to the economy, 5th edition, by Thomas Sowell.
It's great to be back.
A business that wastes money goes bankrupt. A government agency that wastes money gets a bigger budget. Now you understand why they behave differently.
You know, that line, it sounds like a bumper sticker, doesn't it?
It really does. It's so concise, so punchy. You could almost dismiss it as, just some cynical talking point.
Exactly. It's the kind of thing you'd see on a political meme. But the thing about Sowell is, and this is what we're going to dig into today, that bumper sticker is like the tip of an enormous iceberg.
It's a conclusion, not just a complaint.
It's a conclusion derived from a deep structural analysis of how human organizations actually work. He's not just saying, oh, government is wasteful. He's trying to explain the physics of why it's wasteful. It's baked into the system itself.
And that's our whole mission for this deep dive. We're stepping away for a bit from the supply and demand curves and the charts we've been looking at in previous lessons.
Right.
Today is all about the people. It's about incentives. We're going to try and get our heads around this central question. Why do very smart, often well-intentioned people in government make decisions that, from the outside, look completely backwards? Or, frankly, just stupid?
And Sowell's answer is that they're not stupid at all. They're being perfectly rational. The problem is they are playing a completely different game with a different rule book and a different way of keeping score.
That's the core friction, right? We all complain that government should run like business. It's this constant refrain in politics.
You hear it in every election cycle. I'm a business person. I'll bring business sense to Washington.
And Sowell's argument, which we'll unpack, is that this is structurally impossible. It's not about will or intelligence. It's that the feedback mechanisms, the very things that tell you if you're winning or losing, are diametrically opposed.
Completely. They point in opposite directions.
So, here's the roadmap for today. We're going to look at what Sowell calls the rational actor within a bureaucracy. We'll explore the huge problem of time horizons, which is basically why politicians seem incapable of... And then we'll get into the stickiness of bad policies. Why things like farm subsidies, which almost everyone agrees are wasteful, seem to be immortal. They never, ever die.
They're like political zombies.
Exactly. And finally, we'll tackle that big question directly. Why do so many successful, brilliant CEOs fail, and fail spectacularly, when they take jobs in government?
It's a fascinating puzzle. It's like a champion swimmer trying to play professional soccer.
Yeah.
The athleticism is there, but the rules of the game are just alien.
All right, so let's jump in with that first part of the opening line. A business that wastes money goes bankrupt. I want to push back on that a little bit, just to play devil's advocate.
Please do.
Because we see businesses, especially in the tech world, that burn through cash for years. They waste enormous sums of money and don't make a profit for a decade, but their stock price goes up. How does that fit into Sowell's model?
That's a great question, because it forces us to be precise. When Sowell talks about the market, he makes this really crucial distinction. We tend to call our system a profit system. You hear it all the time, right? It's all about greed and profit.
Sure.
Sowell says that's only half the story, and it's the less important half. He says it's a profit and loss system. And the loss part is the engine of discipline. It's the great corrector.
The loss is the referee blowing the whistle on waste.
It's more than a referee. It's gravity. It's an inescapable law of the system. Now, to your point about the tech startup that burns cash for 10 years, they are still subject to that law. They aren't getting their money from customers yet, but they're getting it from investors.
From venture capitalists.
Right. And those investors are placing a bet. They are betting that the company's current waste, all that spending on research, development, marketing, is actually an investment that will eventually create something so valuable that it will generate massive profits down the road.
So the day of reckoning is just delayed, not absent.
Exactly. There's a horizon.
Yeah.
At some point, the company has to prove to the market, either to its investors or its customers, that it can create more value than it consumes. If it can't, the investors stop writing checks, the money runs out, and the business goes bankrupt. The loss mechanism still works, it's just operating on a longer timeline.
So the loss forces the resources, the programmers, the office space, the servers, to be reallocated to someone who can hopefully use them more effectively.
That's the key. The loss tells the economy, stop giving this organization resources, it is destroying them. Think of a simple bakery. They buy $100 worth of flour, sugar, eggs, and electricity. They use $100 worth of labor. That's $200 of inputs.
Yeah.
If they turn that into bread that people are willing to buy for $300, they've made a $100 profit. That profit is a signal. It's society saying, yes, you took these scattered resources and combined them into something more valuable. Do more of that.
You've created wealth.
You've created wealth. But what if they burn all the bread? Or make bread that tastes terrible, and they can only sell it for $50? They just lost $150. That loss is a powerful signal too. It says, stop. You are taking valuable flour and labor and turning them into something less valuable. Stop destroying wealth.
And if they don't listen, their bank account hits zero and the system stops them automatically.
The decision maker, the owner, feels that pain directly in their own pocket. It's personal, it's immediate, and it forces a change in behavior. That is the market's feedback loop. Pain leads to correction.
Okay, that's crystal clear.
Right.
Now, let's pivot to the other side of the coin. The government agency. They have budgets, they have oversight from Congress, they have auditors. It's not like it's the Wild West. How is their feedback loop so different?
You're right, they aren't flying blind. But their navigation system is calibrated to a completely different set of coordinates. In a government agency, as Sowell points out, there is no profit and loss statement. There's only one metric that matters at the end of the day: the budget.
Use it or lose.
That's the mantra. Let's run a thought experiment. Imagine you're the head of a government department. Let's say the Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV. And you're a genius. You're a logistical wizard.
A rare combination at the DMV, perhaps.
Let's pretend. And you figure out a way to streamline everything. You rewrite the software, you retrain the staff, and you manage to process every license and registration with half the staff and in half the time. You save the taxpayer, say, $50 million from your annual budget.
In a private company, if I'm the CEO of Quick Lube, I get a massive bonus.
Yeah.
The shareholders throw a party, my face is on the cover of Forbes.
Right. And what happens to you, the brilliant head of the DMV?
My budget gets cut.
Your budget gets slashed by $50 million next year. The Congressional Appropriations Committee looks at your books and says, oh, wonderful. The DMV proved they don't need all that money. We can take that $50 million and give it to a different agency.
So my reward for incredible efficiency is a smaller empire.
A smaller empire. You may have to lay off staff, which makes you unpopular with your own employees and their union. You have less authority. Your own prestige within the bureaucracy shrinks.
Wait, how does prestige tie into budget size?
In the world of government, your importance, your power, your status is often directly proportional to the size of the budget you control and the number of people who report to you. A cabinet secretary managing 100,000 employees and a $200 billion budget is a much bigger deal than one managing 5,000 employees and a $1 billion budget.
So by being efficient, I've actively harmed my own career prospects and status.
You have rationally disincentivized yourself from ever being efficient again. The system punishes success and rewards the status quo, or even failure.
How does it reward failure?
Well, let's flip the DMV example. Let's say instead of getting better, things get worse. The lines get longer, the system crashes, there's a huge backlog. What do you, the agency head, do when you go before Congress?
I don't say we're incompetent. I say the problem is much bigger than we anticipated. The population has grown, the technology is more complex, we are understaffed and under-resourced. We need a bigger budget to solve this crisis.
Precisely. In the market, failure leads to bankruptcy. In government, failure is often the most compelling argument for a budget increase. You get paid, or rather, budgeted, for the existence and the magnitude of a problem, not for its solution.
That is it's a completely perverse incentive structure.
It is, and Sowell is very careful to say, this isn't because government workers are bad people. It's not about malice or corruption, though that can happen. It's about the fundamental severance of the feedback loop.
What do you mean by severance?
When a business owner wastes money, he is wasting his own money, or his investors' money. The cost is borne by the decision maker. When a government official wastes money, he is wasting your money, the taxpayers' money.
The cost is borne by a third party, a diffuse, anonymous group of millions of people.
Exactly. So the decision maker doesn't feel the pain, but they do reap the benefits of a bigger budget. The power, the prestige, the nice office, the ability to award contracts and hire people. The costs and benefits are completely disconnected. It creates what you could call a reality distortion field around their decisions.
And this distortion field, this is what leads to that common complaint we all have. Standing in some line, filling out some form, you just throw your hands up and say, this is so stupid, why is it like this?
We've all been there. And Sowell's counterintuitive answer is, stop calling them stupid. They're not stupid. They are smart people responding rationally to the incentives they face. The stupidity we see is actually the logical outcome of their game.
This feels like the perfect time to bring in one of Sowell's most powerful illustrations of this idea. It comes from the Soviet Union, which was, the ultimate command and control bureaucracy. It's the story of the red paint and the green paint.
Yes, this is an absolutely classic, unforgettable story. It distills the entire concept into one tragic anecdote. So, the setting is the Soviet Union, likely during the Stalin era. The entire economy is centrally planned from Moscow. Every factory has a quota. Every bolt has a specification.
Paper market, there are only orders.
There are only orders. So you have a factory that manufactures heavy mining equipment. Think giant drills, earth movers, and the coal and iron mines are desperate for this equipment.
Yeah.
The entire Soviet 5-year plan depends on getting these minerals out of the ground.
So this is critical, top priority stuff.
Absolutely. The machines are fully built. They're sitting right there on the factory floor, ready to go, but they aren't being shipped. Weeks go by.
Why not? Are the trains on strike? I guess they can't be in the Soviet Union.
No, the trains are ready. The problem is the paint. The official specification from the ministry in Moscow, written in triplicate, states that these particular machines must be painted with red, oil-resistant paint, type 7B or whatever it was.
Okay. Bureaucracies love their specific rules. I get that.
They do. The problem is the factory has run out of red, oil-resistant paint. They have an enormous supply of green, oil-resistant paint, which is functionally identical.
So it does the same job, protects the machine just as well, it's just a different color.
Correct. Or they also have red varnish. It's the right color, but it has no oil-resistant properties, so the machine would rust in a month.
So the choice is, use the functionally correct paint that's the wrong color, or use the functionally wrong paint that's the right color.
Precisely. Now, if you're a business owner in a market economy, what do?
It's not even a question. You use the green paint. You call the customer, you say, hey, we're out of red, is green okay? They say, I don't care if it's purple with pink polka dots, just send me the machine so I can start digging. You ship it, you get paid. Problem solved in 5 minutes.
The cost of using the wrong color is zero. The benefit of making the sale is huge. But remember, in this system, there is no sale. There is only the plan. So the factory manager looks at this dilemma from his perspective.
And what does he see?
He sees that if he uses the green paint, he has violated the explicit written order from the central ministry. In Stalin's Russia, this isn't something that gets you a stern talking to. That's sabotage. That's a crime against the state.
He's not worried about profit and loss. He's worried about prison.
Exactly. The manager is quoted as saying, I don't want to get 8 years. He means 8 years in a gulag labor camp for using the wrong color paint.
So what does he do? He can't just do nothing.
He does the only rational thing a bureaucrat can do. He pushes the decision up the chain of command to avoid personal responsibility. He contacts his superior at the regional ministry. He explains the situation. We have the green paint. It works. The mines need the machines. Can I get permission to ship them?
And the superior officer should just say yes, obviously.
Should. But what does that superior officer say? Well, I don't want to get 8 years either.
Of course. Because if he gives the permission, the responsibility is now his. If anything at all goes wrong with those machines later, the investigation will find that he authorized a deviation from the plan. He's exposed.
His career or his life is on the line. So what does he do? He cables the main ministry in Moscow to ask for their permission to grant his permission. And you can imagine how that goes.
It gets lost in a pile of paperwork for 6 months.
Meanwhile, the desperately needed mining equipment just sits on the factory floor, rusting. The mines don't get their equipment. They failed to meet their coal quota, which means the steel mills don't get enough coal. So they failed to meet their steel quota, which means the tractor factory can't get enough steel. And on and on. The entire economy grinds to a halt.
All because of the color of paint. It's the ultimate example of bureaucratic paralysis.
But here is Sowell's brilliant insight. Nobody in that chain was being stupid. The factory manager was rational. The regional official was rational. They were optimizing for the variable that mattered most in their world, their own personal survival. The fact that their rational choices created a collective disaster is a feature of the system, not a bug.
The system incentivized self-preservation over economic efficiency.
Perfectly put. And Sowell's point is that this isn't just a weird Soviet story. This same dynamic plays out in every bureaucracy, just with lower stakes. In a modern democracy, you don't go to a gulag.
Right, you just get a bad performance review or get passed over for a promotion, or maybe you get fired.
Exactly. but the mechanism is identical. Think about a military procurement officer. The regulations say he has to buy a certain type of hammer from an approved vendor for $500. He knows he can go to Home Depot and buy a perfectly good hammer for $20.
So he could save the taxpayers $480.
Yes, but does he do it? Almost never. Why? Because if he buys the $500 hammer and it breaks, he's blameless. He can hold up the rule book and say, I followed the procedure.
He's covered his asset.
He's covered. But if he buys the $20 hammer and it breaks, or even if it doesn't break, but an auditor comes along and asks why he didn't follow the procurement regulations, now he's in trouble. He's the guy who broke the rules. He took a risk.
And in a bureaucracy, there's no reward for that kind of risk, only punishment if it goes wrong.
The rational choice is to waste $480 of taxpayer money to protect your own career. So when we see that $500 hammer in the Pentagon budget and we scream about waste and stupidity, we're missing the point. It's not stupidity. It's the logical result of the incentives.
So the lesson is, whenever you see a seemingly irrational outcome from a government action, don't ask, why are these people so dumb? Ask, what incentive structure makes this irrational action a perfectly smart move for the person doing it?
That is the sole question to ask. Always follow the incentives.
This seems to lead us directly into the next big structural problem he identifies, which is the problem of time. The time horizon. This feels incredibly relevant today when we talk about things like national debt or climate change or crumbling infrastructure.
This is a huge piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
So it draws a very stark contrast between the way markets perceive time and the way politics perceives time.
In economics, there's this concept of present value. Can you break that down for us in a simple way?
Sure, it sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. It's that the value of something in the future affects its value today. The market has a way of pulling the future into the present.
How does that work in practice?
Let's use a corporate example. Imagine you're the CEO of a big airline. Your job is to maximize the value of the company, which is reflected in the stock price. You have a big expense coming up. A mandatory $10 billion overhaul of the jet engines across your fleet. It's for safety and efficiency down the road.
Okay, a huge but necessary long-term investment.
Right. Now, you have an election, a quarterly earnings report coming up, and you want your profits to look amazing. So you think, you know what? I'm just going to skip the engine maintenance this year. I'll defer it. That'll add $10 billion straight to my bottom line.
So in the short term, profits look fantastic.
They look incredible. But what happens to the company's stock price the moment you announce this? Does it go up?
No way. It would plummet.
Why?
Because every investor, every market analyst knows that you're creating a massive future liability. The engines will be less efficient, they'll be more dangerous, and the eventual cost to fix them will be even higher. You've basically mortgaged the company's future for a short-term gain.
Exactly. The future cost of that deferred maintenance is immediately discounted into the present stock price.
Yeah.
The market forces the CEO to care about the long-term health of the company today. The future casts a shadow on the present.
Okay, I see how that works in the market. There's a tangible daily scoreboard, the stock price, that reflects future expectations. So how is politics different?
In politics, there is no stock price for the country. There is no present value of the nation that a politician has to answer to. There is only one scoreboard that matters.
The next election.
The next election. For a member of the House, that's 2 years away. For a president, it's 4. That is an incredibly short time horizon. Sowell argues this creates a powerful systematic bias in favor of any policy that offers immediate visible benefits while pushing the costs off into the future, preferably after the next election.
So if you can cut the ribbon on the new project before people vote and send the bill to their kids, that's a political win.
That is the political grand slam. It's a rational strategy for getting reelected, even if it's a disastrous strategy for the long-term health of the country.
Sowell uses a fantastic historical example for this, Richard Nixon and the wage and price controls of 1971.
This is the textbook case study. It's almost like a perfect laboratory experiment of this principle. So set the scene. It's 1971. The Vietnam War is still raging. There's a lot of government spending. And inflation is starting to tick up. People are getting worried. It's becoming a major political issue.
And Nixon is facing a tough re-election campaign in 1972.
A very tough campaign. So he's looking for a solution. Now, on one hand, you have basically the entire field of economics. His own conservative advisors like Milton Friedman are screaming at him, do not impose wage and price controls. It is economic poison.
Why? What's the economic argument against them?
Because prices are signals. They tell producers what to make and consumers what to conserve. If you freeze prices by law, you blindfold the entire economy. You create massive shortages because producers have no incentive to make things they can't sell for a profit, and consumers have no incentive to use less of something whose price is artificially low.
So Nixon knew it was bad economic policy. He wasn't ignorant of the theory.
He knew it perfectly well. He was a very smart guy. But he wasn't playing the economics game. He was playing the politics game. The election was just over a year away. He needed to be seen doing something decisive about inflation, and he needed the inflation numbers to look good on paper in November of 1972.
So he chose the short-term political fix over the long-term economic solution.
He imposed a 90-day freeze on virtually all wages and prices in the country. And politically, it was a masterstroke. People loved it. It looked like strong leadership. The inflation statistics were, by definition, flat. He rode that wave of apparent economic stability to a landslide victory in 1972. As Sowell says, it was a complete success politically.
And what happened after the election?
An absolute catastrophe. The moment the controls were eventually lifted, all that pent-up inflation exploded. The shortages he had created came home to roost. You had long gas lines, farmers drowning chickens because they couldn't afford to feed them at the controlled prices. The 1970s became a decade of economic misery or stagflation.
But by then, Nixon was safely back in the White House for his second term. The costs arrived after the votes were counted.
The costs were delayed. The benefits were immediate. Nixon wasn't being economically irrational. He was being politically brilliant. He ate the candy bar for the sugar rush to win the sprint, knowing full well the crash was coming later. But the finish line was the election.
You see this same logic with government spending and debt all the time, don't you?
All the time. A politician can vote for a new spending program today, a new benefit for seniors, a new subsidy for a local industry, and get immediate credit from the voters who receive it. The cost, in the form of higher national debt, is something that future generations will have to deal with. There's no one to vote them out of office on behalf of the unborn.
Sowell also brings up the more mundane example of road maintenance and the gas tax.
Yes, because it's something we all experience. A politician stands up and says, "We need to raise the gas tax to fix our crumbling roads and bridges." It's sold as a user fee. It makes logical sense.
The money is supposed to go into a lockbox for transportation.
That's the promise. But what happens in reality? That lockbox often gets raided. Because filling potholes, while essential, is boring. It's invisible work. It doesn't win you a lot of votes.
But building a brand new, shiny convention center or a light rail to a politically important suburb.
Now that gets you a ribbon-cutting ceremony. That gets your name on a plaque. That's a visible, tangible benefit you can campaign on. So politicians have an enormous incentive to divert the boring maintenance money to more glamorous, short-term projects that buy votes.
And the roads continue to crumble. The long-term cost is ignored for the short-term political gain.
The pothole that wrecks your car in 5 years doesn't vote in this election. The construction worker building the new stadium does. The incentives are perfectly aligned for short-sightedness.
This brings us to the next big theme, which you called political zombies. If a policy is clearly bad, like the price controls, or if a program is wasteful, why can't the government just stop? A business discontinues a product that loses money all the time.
Right. Ford got rid of the Edsel. Coca-Cola killed New Coke. The market provides swift feedback. But in government, bad ideas rarely die. They just get bigger budgets.
Why? Is it just institutional inertia?
It's more than that. So Forel explains this with one of the most powerful concepts in political economy, the principle of concentrated benefits and dispersed costs.
Okay, break that down. It sounds a little academic.
It's actually very simple and explains almost everything about why special interests have so much power. Let's use Sowell's go-to example, subsidies for the sugar industry.
Right. We protect our domestic sugar producers from cheaper foreign competition.
Yes. Through a complex system of tariffs and quotas, the U.S. government keeps the price of sugar in America artificially high, often 2 to 3 times the world price. Sowell calculated this costs American consumers about $1.9 billion a year.
Wow, that's a lot of money, nearly $2 billion.
In total, it is. But here's the crucial part. Let's disperse that cost. You divide $1.9 billion by 330 million Americans. What does that cost you personally in a year?
I don't know, $5-6? Maybe $10 or $20 for my whole family and higher prices for soda and cereal.
Exactly. It's an amount so small you don't even notice it. Are you going to write a letter to your congressman, take a day off work, and organize a protest march to save yourself $10 a year on sugar?
Of course not. It's not worth my time. The cost is annoying, but it's completely dispersed and almost invisible to me.
Okay, Now let's look at the other side, the benefits. That $1.9 billion doesn't go to 330 million people. It goes to a very small, very wealthy group of sugar corporations and landowners. For them, this isn't $10, this is hundreds of millions of dollars. This is their entire business model.
So for them, the benefit is highly concentrated.
It's life or death. So what are they willing to do to protect that $1.9 billion?
Anything. They'll hire the best lobbyists in Washington. They'll donate millions of dollars to political campaigns. They'll run ads. They'll fly members of Congress down to visit their facilities.
Exactly. So now, put yourself in the shoes of a politician. You have a choice. You can vote to keep the sugar subsidies. If you do, the sugar lobby gives you a massive campaign donation and maybe runs ads supporting you, the voters. They don't notice. It's $10. It's a non-issue.
Okay, that's option one.
Option two, you vote to end the sugar subsidies.
Yeah.
You save each of your constituents $10. Do they thank you? Do they even know you did it? No. But what does the sugar lobby do?
They give all that money to my opponent and run millions of dollars in attack ads against me.
So your choice is vote for the bad policy and get rewarded, or vote for the good policy and get punished. What's the rational choice for the politician?
It's a no-brainer. You take the sugar money every single time.
And that is why bad policies stick around. The small group that benefits cares passionately, while the large group that pays the cost doesn't care enough to fight back. So Duo points out this isn't a partisan issue either.
He says the sugar lobby gives to both Democrats and Republicans.
They buy everybody. It's an insurance policy. This is about the fundamental logic of politics, not ideology. And this dynamic is why farm subsidies in general are the ultimate zombie program.
You mentioned before they started in the Great Depression.
Yes. They were sold to the public as a temporary emergency measure to save the small family farmer during the Dust Bowl. It was a crisis.
Temporary? That was almost 100 years ago.
A century later, we're still paying billions every year. And who gets the money? Is it that struggling family farmer you see in the commercials?
Sowell says no. He cites a 2002 farm bill where most of the money went to the richest 10% of agricultural producers.
And not just rich farmers. He names names. Billionaires like David Rockefeller and Ted Turner. Fortune 500 companies like John Hancock Insurance. These entities were getting government checks funded by taxpayers as farm subsidies.
It's absurd.
It's the logical endpoint of concentrated benefits. Once a program is created, it creates a constituency of people who depend on that government money. That constituency then becomes a powerful lobby to ensure the program never ends, and in fact, only grows.
This is the mission creep idea. The program's survival becomes its own purpose.
Exactly. An agency is created to solve a problem. But if it ever actually solves the problem, the agency's budget will be cut and its employees will be out of a job. So the incentive is to never solve the problem, but to manage it indefinitely. The problem becomes a permanent justification for the agency's existence and expansion.
Okay, so the picture you're painting is, well, it's pretty bleak. We have a system with severed feedback loops, short time horizons, and incentives that reward waste and entrench bad policies.
It does sound bleak when you lay it all out.
So this leads to the inevitable question that everyone asks. If government is so broken, why don't we just get a successful CEO to run it? We need to run government like a business.
The eternal hope. If we could just get a Henry Ford or a Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk in there, they would clean house, fire the deadwood, and make things efficient.
Does Sowell buy that argument?
Not for a second.
No.
In fact, he sees it as a dangerous fallacy. And he's not alone. He quotes the Nobel laureate economist George Stigler, who made a fascinating observation. Stigler noted that over the years, many highly successful, brilliant titans of industry have taken high-level jobs in government. Cabinet secretaries, agency heads, czars of various initiatives.
Right. It happens all the time.
And Stigler's conclusion was that most of them, he thought the vast majority, were less than distinguished successes. Many were outright failures in their government roles.
But why? These are people who are demonstrably geniuses at management and logistics in one field. Does their IQ just drop by 50 points when they enter a federal building?
It's not about their IQ. It's about the game. They are masters of one game, the market game, and they're suddenly dropped into a totally different one, the political game. The skills are not transferable.
You use the analogy of a champion swimmer trying to play soccer.
It's the perfect analogy. The swimmer is a world-class athlete, powerful, disciplined, incredible endurance. But if you put him on a soccer field and he tries to do the breaststroke on the grass, he's going to look like a fool. The problem isn't the athlete. The problem is he doesn't know the rules of the new game. The levers he's used to pulling are all disconnected.
What are those levers? What can a CEO do that a government secretary can't?
Okay, let's break it down. Lever number one for any turnaround CEO:
Yeah.
personnel. You walk into a failing company, you identify the underperformers, and you fire them. You bring in your own team. You change the culture.
Can you do that in government?
Barely. You get to appoint a few people at the very top. But the vast majority of the employees are career civil servants. They are protected by layers of regulations and union contracts that make it incredibly difficult to fire someone for anything short of a major crime. You can take years of documentation and hearings just to remove one incompetent employee.
So the CDO walks in, points to someone, and says, "You're fired," and the HR department just laughs.
Pretty much. So lever number one is gone. Okay, lever number two, resource allocation. A CEO looks at the company and says, "Our widget division has been losing money for 10 years. It's a drag on the whole company. We're shutting it down."
And he can do that with a single order.
Yes. Now, the government secretary walks in and sees a program, a widget division, that is a demonstrable failure. It's wasting billions. Can he just shut it down?
Oh, because the program was created by an act of Congress.
And it probably has a powerful constituency, and its funding is mandated by law. The secretary can't just defy Congress. He has to go back to them and convince 535 people, all with their own political incentives, to agree to kill the program that many of them probably benefit from.
So lever number two is gone. He can't fire bad people and he can't cut bad programs.
Now, lever number three, and this is the most important: stakeholders. Who does a CEO ultimately answer to?
The shareholders.
Yeah.
And maybe the board of directors.
And what do they want primarily?
A return on their investment, profit, a higher stock price. It's a pretty clear, unified goal.
Very clear. Now, who does the government secretary answer to? He answers to the president, who appointed him, but he also answers to Congress, which controls his budget, and he answers to the courts, who can rule his actions illegal. He answers to the media, looking for a scandal. He answers to the special interest groups, and he answers to the voters. And all of those stakeholders want completely different and often contradictory things.
Congress wants jobs in their district. The voters want more services for less taxes. The media wants a good story. Efficiency is probably last on everyone's list.
The CEO, who is used to a clear, single-goal profit, is suddenly thrown into a world where he has to appease a dozen different masters with conflicting demands. He's no longer a commander. He's a political negotiator. And it's a skill he doesn't have. He reaches for the levers of power and finds they're all just painted on the wall.
So it's not that business leaders are unsuited for government. It's that the very structure of government is designed to frustrate the skills that make a business leader successful.
That's Sowell's argument in a nutshell.
Let's try to bring this into the present day. Can we see this dynamic of politicians and markets playing different games in a major recent event?
I think the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic is a perfect, large-scale illustration of everything we've talked about.
Specifically, the economic response. Things like the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP loans.
Yes. Think about the incentives at play. In the spring of 2020, the economy is shutting down, there's panic. What is the number one political incentive for Congress and the president?
To be seen to be doing something, anything, and doing it fast. Speed is everything.
Speed and visibility. We have to get money out the door now and now to save the economy. That was the overwhelming political imperative. If they had waited to design a perfect, efficient system, the economy might have collapsed and they would have been blamed.
Okay, so the political incentive is speed above all else. What would the economic or business incentive have been in that situation?
The business incentive would have been efficiency and accuracy. It would have been, let's make absolutely sure this money only goes to businesses that truly need it and will actually fail without it. Let's build a robust verification system to prevent fraud.
But that would have been slow.
Incredibly slow. It would have taken months to build that kind of system. So they faced a direct trade-off: political speed versus economic efficiency. Which one do you think they chose?
They chose speed. They basically threw trillions of dollars out of a helicopter and hoped it landed in the right places.
And what was the predictable result, according to Sowell's framework?
Well, a lot of it didn't land in the right places. We had rampant fraud, people using PPP loans to buy Lamborghinis and luxury watches. We had billions going to publicly traded companies with plenty of access to capital, while small businesses on Main Street couldn't get through on the phone.
Exactly. The waste and fraud weren't an unexpected bug in the system. They were the predictable price of prioritizing political speed over economic diligence. The cost, the fraud, the future inflation from all the new money, the massive increase in debt, that's all dispersed and delayed. But the benefit, the checks arriving in people's bank accounts, the positive headlines, that was immediate and politically valuable.
It fits the model perfectly.
It does. But this brings us to the important warning, or the debate angle we need to address. Hearing all this, someone might conclude that Sowell is an anarchist who thinks all government is bad and should be abolished.
Right. Is he saying we should just have no government at all?
No, not at all. Sowell is a classical liberal, not an anarchist. He's very clear that there are essential legitimate functions that only government can and should perform,
Such as
providing national defense, enforcing the rule of law, protecting property rights, enforcing contracts through a court system. Basically, government's job is to set and enforce the rules of the game so that a free market and a free society can function. He's not arguing against the existence of a referee.
He's arguing against the referee trying to play every position on the field.
That's a great way to put it. His warning is against mission creep. It's a warning against what economists call the nirvana fallacy.
The nirvana fallacy, what's that?
It's the habit of comparing the messy, imperfect reality of the market to a theoretical, imaginary, perfect version of government.
So we see a problem in the market, say high housing costs, and we say the market has failed. And then we assume that the proposed government solution will work perfectly, as designed, with no unintended consequences.
Yes. We compare imperfect markets to a hypothetical, all-knowing, perfectly efficient, and benevolent government that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
Sowell's whole point is that we have to stop doing that. We must compare the real imperfect market against the real imperfect government.
So we have to compare imperfect markets, which are disciplined by profit and loss, against imperfect government, which is driven by budgets and votes.
And when you make that comparison, you have to be very, very careful about which problems you ask the government to solve.
Right.
Because you are handing the problem to an institution that is structurally short-sighted, that rewards waste, and that is easily captured by special interests.
So the debate question for you, the listener, isn't should we have a government? The question is, given that government incentives are so fundamentally skewed away from long-term efficiency, are there any economic problems beyond setting the basic rules that government is better equipped to handle than the market?
And that's a tough question. Can we ever design a government institution that is insulated from short-term political pressure and can genuinely focus on the long term? Maybe something like the Federal Reserve was intended to be? It's a real challenge.
All right, as we bring this deep dive to a close, let's try to boil it all down to the essential. A final recap.
I'd say it's this. The market plays a game scored by profit and loss. Losses are the crucial disciplining force that punishes waste and reallocates resources efficiently. The feedback is swift and felt by the decision maker.
And government plays a completely different game, scored by budgets and votes. In this game, waste can actually be a strategy for growth. The feedback is severed, because the costs are paid by anonymous taxpayers in the future, while the benefits are pocketed by concentrated interests today.
And crucially, remember Sowell's point that this isn't about good people versus bad people. It's about smart people rationally responding to the rules of the game they find themselves in.
So the final thought we want to leave everyone with is this. The next time you see a government policy or program that just seems bafflingly stupid, stop yourself from just getting angry.
Instead, put on your Thomas Sowell glasses and ask the right question.
Don't ask, how can they be so dumb? Ask, who, right now, is benefiting from this stupidity and who, somewhere down the line, is paying the invisible cost?
Because if you can answer that, you'll understand why it's happening.
That was lesson 11 of 14 on basic economics, a common sense guide to the economy, 5th edition. Subscribe for the full series. If you haven't seen our debate overview of the whole book, check that out, link in the description. Thanks for being here. See you next time.